welcome back to Downbelow RPG, Designing an Adventure. I'm Ian.
I'm Steve.
And Steve, let's set a scene.
Alright, so this is the first scene. This is probably, in many ways, the most important scene of the whole thing, because this is the scene that gets your characters and players bought into the adventure.
Mm-hmm.
There are various controversies surrounding the use and abuse of player agency.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of questioning about railroading. There's a lot of questioning about forcing things. And before I begin, I'm going to spend a couple of seconds talking about the concept of player agency. The concept of player agency does not say that the players must be directly responsible for everything that happens to them. Just like in the real world, nobody is directly responsible for everything that happens to them. In fact, I think it is bad form to start off every adventure with a what do you do to start this off, especially if your plan is to delve into the dungeon of what's-his-name and you're worried about the players not choosing that. It's bad form. You prepped the dungeon. Your players are playing a dungeon crawling game.
One of the traditions in role-playing games that we like to avoid is you all meet in a bar. We prefer in media res, where things are already in swing, but it doesn't have to be full in media res. So what do you think? You all meet in a cell, or what do you think?
The reason I'm saying this is player agency is not all about everything here is something you have done.
Mm-hmm.
The player agency is your choices matter and are respected, and your choices generate consequences.
Mm-hmm.
So, each of the players will eventually all meet in a cell. The cell is going to be a relatively low security, hopefully low security, holding room. Because the first scene is going to be the players immediately post-arraignment. It is up to the DM whether they want to run individual scenes showcasing each player's arraignment. They should at least write it down. They should at least let the players know what they're in for. This is after the players have been semi-convicted. They have not yet stood full trial, but they've been brought in. They've been semi-convicted. They've been informed that there's incontrovertible evidence of their wrongdoing. They've been informed about some of what's at stake. This is all for a crime that the characters say they didn't commit. The distinction "say" is important because, as was alluded to earlier, yes, they have all, in fact, one way or another, been framed or, well, deframed, because in some cases, this could be a crime they actually didn't commit, but there's video evidence placing them at the scene of, if not committing the crime, and any evidence to the contrary is disappeared. This could also be a crime that they committed, but whose video evidence was supposed to have been wiped, disregarded, misfiled, or otherwise dealt with. As far as the players know, what's happening is they've been arrested, they've been arraigned, these crimes are fairly serious, so we're not talking about simple trespassing. We may well be talking about people framed for violent crimes, murder, or simple theft. But we're talking fairly major crimes here. So major that the punishment is not going to be a few days in Nuevo Paradis of jail cell and then release because we don't want to feed you anymore. Here's a black mark on your record, go and sin no more. Mm-hmm. The punishment is in this case, theoretically going to be extradition to China. This is a bad thing because, countries have different ways of dealing with wrongdoers, and
you may not have watched our other videos or read the setting material, but just to bring you up to speed, China has gobbled up a bunch of other Asian and Southeast Pacific pieces of territory in this setting, and has made a fair bid towards that sort of greater Pacific prosperity sphere that Japan was trying to create in World War II. They did it a little more peacefully, but not necessarily all that much. And they have a bad reputation for human rights, just like they do today.
This is not to say that they're going into war crimes concentration camps. This is to say that, much like the American penal system right now, prisoners will be put to work. Unfortunately, prisoners have a reputation of getting into a company store scenario, again, like the old American railway system, where you were paid but all of your food and board and tools came out of the company store, and if you ran out of money, because you would, because the company store charged exorbitant rates, they were more than happy to take it out of your next paycheck, leading to people being so far in debt.
You work 16 hours, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt.
So this is one of the reasons that being extradited to China for processing once found guilty, or even for full trial, is a bad thing, because chances are you'll get stuck in the penal system, and you're gone at that point.
So I've got one last question before we close this video.
Yes.
Real quick, give a couple of possible exit scenarios as endpoints for this early scene that occur to you.
I'm going to start with the worst case scenario first. Worst case exit scenario, the characters are en route to extradition, and the transport is crashed by an outside force. This is literally worst case scenario, because if the players have not thought of anything, it is okay for the DM to introduce a factor that is going to get them out. This factor is probably simply a dissident group that wants to strike a blow against the government of, in this case specifically China, or a criminal group that wants to get at the cargo, not actually directly connected to the deeper conspiracy. Scaling that back a couple of steps, if characters have connections to criminal organizations, at this point their arraignment has been a largely peaceful one, unless we're talking about people who were in fact arrested for violent crimes. If some of them but even they get their phone calls. They can call to arrange things, whether it's lawyers, whether it's criminal contacts, etc., etc. They can arrange to be sprung for at least the time being. Stepping back another step, if the characters have good reputations, the characters could be released for a few days on their own recognizance, because this is a low security thing. It's not like they're leaving the island. Here's a tracking bracelet. You have a couple days to your trial. Just, stay out of further trouble till then, even though we know you're guilty. And then, of course, there's the player-directed prison break, which it's more of a jailbreak, because they're not in a full-fledged prison at this point, but a holding cell break. There's all sorts of possible exit scenarios. The important thing is that after all of the exit scenarios, the next meeting is going to be one of a clandestine nature.
So one way or another, they're going to end up looking over their shoulders for the law, actively or in the back of their minds, and with an opportunity to try to do something. We'll see you tomorrow for system considerations.